Okay, we're going to start today on Ayin Dalet Amid Aleph on the bottom. Feel less pressure, like close to the place where we're supposed to be. Take it easy. Okay, we thank Hashem that you're able to learn Torah every day. It's good to learning. Based in English immediately. So we're starting from the bottom line. It says Amar Mar, and Amar Mar is a quote from. It's a quote from this Brisa, which quotes Reb Shimon ben Yehuda in the name of Reb Shimon. What happened was, in the Brisa, what happened was there were Rimayne Badan, which were extra special pomegranates, that they were never going to be batal if they were from Arla or something like that. They would never be nullified if one of them was Arla in a big mixture. So the Brisa said, Rabbi Yehuda says that if they fall into a mixture, they'll make something else or even the smallest amount. So if it fell into one mixture, and from that mixture to another mixture, it was going to be asr as well. Reb Shimon ben Yehuda said the name of Reb Shimon that the first mixture is asr, but if from that mixture it fell into three, which means another mixture, and from the second mixture it fell into a third mixture, then everything becomes permissible. Now, Tosfos explains that what do you mean everything becomes permissible? Not the first mixture, but the second and the third mixture both become permissible. So why do you need the second and the third? Just have the second. So it's the reason is because when I take from the second, maybe it fell into the third. And notice I need a sveka. First mixture is the first suffix. And when it falls into the second mixture, falls into the second mixture. So I still say that maybe I'm taking the one from. I'm not sure if the first mixture is considered a suffix. First mixture may just be asr. The second mixture would be a suffix, and then the third mixture. Now I don't know between the second one and the third one if when I take from the second one, if maybe it fell out already, and if I take from the third one, maybe it never fell in. So that would be the svek. I can take both of them. Anyway, that was the opinion of Reb Shimon ben Yehuda in the name of Reb Shimon. So Amar Mar, master taught, but going back to Reb Shimon ben Yehuda, the name of Reb Shimon, Meiriba l'shleisha. If it fell from the first mixture of 10,000 into three, and mishleisha l'makamacher, then it fell from those three into another mixture. It says mutter. It's all mutter. Back to the Gemara asks, Maishna, what is it that you specifically taught that l'shleisha, it shows a case where it fell into three pomegranates, the ikaruba, that over there 1 and 3 is, why 3? Because 1 and 3, the 3 would be the majority. It says l'shnayim nami ikaruba. If it fell into 2, you also have a majority. No, that's not what it means. It fell from one container into another container. It didn't fall into three containers. It fell into from one container to another container. First container had 10,000. Second container had 3 in it. Now, which one fell? We don't know which one fell. Something fell. First container was entirely prohibited. The second container is also prohibited. But if from that container it falls into another container, then I permit both of the second container. Yeah. Even though the second one had 3, it didn't have 10,000. Had 3, but that's enough. The Gemara says, why do you need 3? That's enough. What do you need? Do you just need majority? The 2 is also majority. So the Gemara answers, my shleisha diktani, what do we mean? It fell into a container of 3, tarti v'hu, fell into a container of 2 plus it. That's 3. So it's 3 after it fell in, it's 3. And that's typical to what we understood. Okay, the following words, Biba Yisema Savralak Rabbalazar, two pshatim in Rashi, what Bechlal this Gemara is doing. One pshat is that we were looking before for a explanation for Shmuel. Shmuel says that if one mixture falls into another mixture, if the first mixture fell into the second mixture, it's going to be asr only if that's avodah zarah, but not if it's other items. And we said that he's going to hold like Rabbi Yehuda in one case, he's going to hold like Rabbi Yehuda in a different case. By this, that was our explanation at the end of yesterday's Gemara. If you want, I can tell you that he doesn't hold like it's not Rabbi Yehuda partially like Rabbi Yehuda. We can say that Shmuel holds like Rabbi Eliezer. There is a Mishnah in Avodah Zarah where it says that if you used wood to wood from Avodah Zarah to heat up an oven, bake bread with it. So even if the bread got mixed in with other bread, or maybe I'm not sure if it's the bread that got, I don't remember if it's the bread that got mixed in or if the wood got mixed in. What does it say in the commentary there? The bread got mixed in with other breads, so everything is aser. And Rabbi Eliezer in that Mishnah says that it's not a problem. All you have to do is you take the benefit that you got from that wood, the value of that wood, and you just throw it into the Yam HaMelech. You throw it into the Sea of Salt, the Dead Sea, and then it's considered like you took out the prohibited part, because the rule by Avodah Zarah is tefesa system out. It grabs hold of its redemption money. So in other words, you can actually exchange it over. If you would sell Avodah Zarah, the thing that you bought with it, if you sold Avodah Zarah, you get money. That money becomes usher as well. And that money gets exchanged. When you use that money for something, it keeps getting exchanged. So Avodah Zarah's tefesa system, it grabs its money. So therefore, there's also that stringency that Avodah Zarah has, that it doesn't get exchanged so easily, also means that if you take a piece of it out, if you take the value of it out, you actually got rid of the Avodah Zarah part. But whatever the case is, even though it fell from one mixture into another mixture, we're seeing that Avodah Zarah continues on, one mixture to another mixture to another. It doesn't become nullified in the second or third mixture. Which opinion is that? That's the opinion of Shmuel. So we have a teretz that Shmuel holds specifically by Avodah Zarah like Rabbi Eliezer, which we find in that Mishnah, that it continues on. Here's another pshat that Rashi brings. Rashi's pshat is like this. Second pshat. Rashi's Lishna Achrina, asking like this. We said it's not going back on the previous Gemara. It's a continuation of this Gemara. We said over here that why do you say you had to fall into 3, even if it fell into 2, it should be the same thing, right? 2 is a majority. 2 to 1 is a majority. Why do you say 3? So we're following the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer that if you remember yesterday we learned that if animals were mixed up and one had a mum and with others that didn't have a mum, so we said that you were able to, once they were shechted, we said that you were able to offer both up because one of them was definitely permissible. You were able to offer not one at a time, but 2 at a time. You had to do 2 at a time. And there was an extra logic there that we would say that because one of them is for sure permissible, the other one gets like pushed in together with the other one. That's each one says, "What I mean, my friend can enter," right? So it gets pushed in. So if that's the case, if we're following Rabbi Eliezer, then we could explain over here why do we say it had to fall into 3? Because we needed to say that 2 of them were taken out, not one of them was taken out. And in order to say that 2 of them were taken out and not say that the majority went out, we have to have 4 in total, not 3 in total. So that other opinion that says in order to permit this, you need to do 2 at a time, which we had yesterday, there's a concept of 2 at a time, that was Rabbi Eliezer, that's explaining the number 4, the number right over here, it fell into a mixture of 3, but there's 2 totally different pshatim in what's going on in this Ibaya Sema. Okay. Rish Lakish. Rish Lakish says, this is a new piece. Chavis, Shel Truma, Shenesarva B'mei Chavis. Said before that barrels of wine were one of the 6 items, or 7 items, right? Rabbi Kiva and the other opinion, that are never batal. It's very, it's considered chashiv, it's not batal. So if I have truma, a barrel of truma that gets mixed in with 100 other barrels, usually 1 in 100 in truma is batal. But this is a chavis. This is a barrel. It's not batal. So, v'naf la'achas mem liyam melech. One of them on the boat, one of the barrels of beer fell off. Right. One of the barrels of wine. It's wine. One of the barrels of wine fell off. So all of the rest become permissible. The amrinan special heter. Amrinan hachte nafal disur nafal. The one that fell out was the bad one. Was the over here in this case it's the truma one. So we actually had this case before. We had this case by a box of rings. One of them was from Avodah Zarah, and it got one of the rings got mixed into one of the Avodah Zarah rings got mixed into this box. And we said that one of the rings fell into the Yam HaMelech or something. We said the rest of the box is permissible. We say that the one that fell out was the bad one. So we have over here Rish Lakish saying the same halacha by wine. We in truma wine. We have Reb Nachman that said it before about the rings from Avodah Zarah. The Gemara explains V'Itzrichter Rish Lakish and V'Itzrichter Reb Nachman V'Itzrichter Rish Lakish. We need both statements over here because one of them wouldn't have taught me the other one. Reb Nachman Minahani Mili Avodas Kecham Dein Lamatirin. I could have thought that why do we have this lenient view that if one of them fell out, we permit the rest of the mixture because we say the one that fell out was the bad one. That's because we wanted to give some permissibility to this, and there's nothing you can do with Avodah Zarah. It would be absolutely asur ba'ana. There's nothing you can do with it. So we said, okay, if it falls out, so it's going to be. We'll say that that's what happened. We'll say that the bad one fell out. But truma, where you have other options, you don't have to say that what fell out was the one that was the bad one. What's the other options? Feed it to Kainim. It's not totally asur. You sell it to Kainim. So I would say that we're not going to be lenient. So therefore, I need Rish Lakish to tell me that we're going to be lenient by truma as well, and say that the one that fell out, the barrel that fell out, was the one that had the truma in it. If it would only tell me the one by truma, I would have thought that it's specifically by the barrel that falls out that we're going to be lenient. The minkra and the filasa, because you see the missing barrel, you see that there's an empty space. The barrel is missing, right? Everything is all all in rows, and there's one barrel that's missing. So no one's going to say that we were mater this mixture without anything happening. Everyone's going to realize that a barrel fell out, and that's why it's mutter. But when it came to the rings, bucket of rings, no one knows if there's 99 or 100 in there, right? Or 101. No one knows if there's a missing ring. So we would say that maybe we can't allow a mixture like that to become permissible just because one fell out. People are going to think that we're just allowing something that's prohibited. So therefore, tzrichi, we need Rav Nachman and Rish Lakish. Amar Rabba. Tell me. The barrel isn't batal because it's chashav. Now we say that if it fell out, we say the prohibited one fell out. Right? What's the problem? The rings are not batal because in a mixture of Avodah Zarah it's not batal. Avodah Zarah is not batal. It doesn't have to do with the importance of the rings, right? It's not because the rings are kosher. Because Avodah Zarah is never batal. You see, by the barrels it should be batal in 100.
Yeah. But is truma ever batal?
Yeah, in 100. It's batal in 100. Except if it's a barrel, it's a different story. Yeah, it's batal the way the way it's done because truma. It's supposed to be 2 in 100. Anyway, it's batal. I think truma is batal in 100. I think.
So it's more like, why is it important that it's truma?
The significance in our Gemara was that it was wine that was truma because the fact that it was permissible to a Kohen could have led me to think that maybe we shouldn't allow it to become batal. We shouldn't allow it to be permissible when one of them fell out. They have other solutions, similar to a davar sheyesh le matirin. By a davar sheyesh le matirin, anything that will be permissible after time, we don't say that it's batal. It's not batal. We say, why do you have to use the rules of bittul? Go eat it, like Rashi says over there. Just go eat it in after Yom Tov, the egg that was laid on Yom Tov. So we don't say bittul. So maybe we could say over here, look, this is truma. Let's say go sell it to a kohen. Why do you have to rely on the bittul that one fell out and I'll say that everything is batal? They say that was the one that fell out. But you don't have to come onto those opinions. Sell it to a kohen. And you don't have to come. Mashmul and Rish Lakish that says that no, even though it's a yesh le matirin, we still say that the one that fell out was the bad one. Yeah, that was the chiddush. Okay.
And that's why it's different from Avodah Zarah,
By the Zara,
which can never ever become acceptable,
right?
Whatever you do.
But the same thing would apply if it was Avodah Zarah. Just I wouldn't have the chiddush. If this would have been a barrel of wine of Avodah Zarah, the same thing would apply. One of them fell out, we would say the other ones are permissible. I just could have thought by Truma, maybe I don't say that. Amar Rabba, Lahit Rish Lakish ala chavis d'minkra nefilasa. Rabba says that Rish Lakish actually only allowed a chavis, a barrel, because over there you can recognize that it fell out. Aval te'ena, but if it was, let's say, figs of Truma, it was a mixture of figs of Truma, a fig of Truma that fell into a figs of Chulin. It says, te'ena loy, we would say that it's not permissible. You can't tell if the fig fell out. Even if we know that it fell out, but when you look at the mixture, you can't tell that there's one fig missing. Rabbi Yosef Amar afilu te'ena, even if one fig fell out, the same thing would apply. He says, "K'nefilasa kach al yasa." So it's machlekes over here, Rabba and Rabbi Yosef. If the same halacha of Rish Lakish would apply, if it was a mixture of a fig of truma, if one fig fell out, do we say that the one that fell out was the one that was prohibited? Amar Rabbi Lazar. Rabbi Lazar says, "Chaves shel truma shenafla bekuf chavius." If you have a barrel of wine of truma that fell into 100 barrels of chulin, truma, mixed in, we don't know which one is which. Right? It's not that the wine got mixed; it's all mixed up in our head. We don't know where it is. But the wine is all in its original barrel. But Pesach Echad Me'am, the way of resolving this is, what was our problem with wine, with barrels of wine? They were considered chashuv, and they're not batal. But if it wouldn't be chashuv, it would be batal, right? It's only because it's a barrel of wine. So a sealed barrel is chashuv. But if you open one up, then it would say that it's batal. So open one up. Now, what happens with truma is there's two parts to the truma. We're dealing with two rules here. One rule is in Yeridaya, and one rule is in Chesed Mishpat. The Yeridaya rule is that it's 1 second. You can't eat it. It's truma. The other rule is Chesed Mishpat, is you owe the kohen money. So the Yeridaya rule, the rabbinic question over here is, are you allowed to eat this? Do we say it's batal? They say, yeah, it's batal. But then you have another aspect over here, the Chesed Mishpat. We have to go to ask the Bezdin, is that, do I owe the kohen money if I'm going to drink this wine? Maybe there's a part of this that belongs to a kohen. So it says, yeah, you take out the amount that would have been truma, and you give that to a kohen, and that's kadei dimua, the amount of the mixture. It's not the whole barrel. It was a mixture of truma. It means 1 out of 100, because we say that it's mixed in. Like we say that it's spread evenly amongst all the barrels now. That's what we're thinking. And then b'shaisa, and then you can drink the rest of the wine. Okay. Yosef Rabdimi v'kamal alashmaita. Rabdimi was saying over this teaching of Rabbi Lazar, who's Rabdimi's teacher. Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Yochanan, Rabdimi was a student of that generation. Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Yochanan, Rish Lakish, all the classical era of the Yerushalmi, that's Rabbi Yechon and Rish Lakish are. So Rav Dimi says over this halacha. Amar Rav Nachman. Nachman says, "Gamo shteika chazin nacha." We're seeing someone that swallows and drinks. What you're saying is that he's allowed to open the barrel and just start drinking. So Ella Ema, I guess it's Rav Nachman that resolves it. It doesn't mean that they actually go ahead and open one up, take your barrel opener, and open one. No, it means if one of them happened to get open, then the rule is that you're allowed to drink it by taking out the ratio, the proportion of truma. Right, then the whole case is gone. Amar Abaishia. Abaishia says, Chavish shel truma, a barrel of wine, it fell into 150 barrels of chulin. All of them are sealed, and therefore they're not bottled. Right? Let's say there was a wedding, came along the waiter, and opens up 100 barrels. So you take the amount of, which is 1 out of 150 from each barrel, and then you can drink it. But the other ones are considered prohibited until they're open. Because they're chashiv, it's not bottle in the other ones. And we don't say that 1 second, you already opened up 100. Where is the Isser? The Isser is in the majority. That's what we used to say. Remember when we had a bucket of rings? We had 40 rings and 60 rings. We say if the 40 went out, we say all and mixed in with other ones. We say that all of those are permissible because the Isser is still in the 60. This Isser, the prohibited one, is in the majority. Over here, Rabbi Shia is saying that we don't say that. We say that it still could be in the other ones. Now, is this because it's a machlokes? I wonder if in the notes they say because it's a machlokes, or if it's because there's a difference in the cases. Let me see if they have this. The Gemara asks that the Gemara did apparently utilize the principle of forbidden objects found in the majority above. In the case of 100 rings of idolatry, separated in 2 groups of 60 and 40 rings. There, the Gemara prohibits the group of 60 rings because of the assumption that the forbidden was among the majority. Permitted the group of 40 on the basis that it contained only a minority of rings. Shita Mikubetzes 11, in fact, writes that our Gemara disputes the ruling of the rings given above. Okay, that's great. Others reconcile the 2 rulings. It's not, usually when you have the options, it's a machlokes. That's usually what happens. Others reconcile the 2 rulings as follows. There, the principle that the forbidden objects is found in the majority can be used only as a stringency to definitely prohibit the group of 60 rings. Further, it was used as a leniency for the 40 rings only in conjunction with the fact that there was a double doubt, if the forbidden rings contained it. Okay. In our case of the cast, though, no such consideration exists to allow for a lenient decision. Over here would just be a lenient decision to say that we already got rid of the Isser by opening up. This would just be a lenience. Okay. The next piece of the Gemara explains the next part of the Mishnah. We said that if a carbon got mixed in, if an animal that was not eligible to be a carbon because an aveira was done with it, bestiality, or it was designated for avodah zarah, or it was worshipped, or it was given as the fee to a dressmaker, Bechtestein's correctness, and or it was kalayim, was a trait for yitzidayfen. All of these problem animal, maybe the animal was born in a C-section. It wasn't eligible to be brought as a sacrifice. All of those, they had a problem with offering it as a sacrifice, and therefore what we needed to do was we needed to let it get a mum, and we sell it, and then with that we with the money we offered the sacrifice that was supposed to be brought. Bishlei makulu. All of the cases, we understand what the issue was. Lo yediyah. You can't tell which animal it was. Which animal was this one? When you look at the animals, they walk by, they say, "Let me see see what's in your hand." What's if you're guilty or not. All the animals walk by. There's no way of looking at the face or the body of the animal and telling if it's guilty. Is this the one that did the sin? There's nothing on the animal that says that it's the guilty one. Ella, hi treifa, hechidami. What's the case of the treifa? What do you mean treifa? Treifa means that it's not going to live. There's something happened to the animal. Iyadile, if it's obvious, because let's say its legs are chopped or something. So leisi v'lishkale. Then what's the problem? Remove it, and then the rest will be permissible. Illa yadile, and if you can't tell, yada diyarif. So how do you know that it ever got mixed in? A treifa could be when you open it up, you check the lungs, you find out that it's a treifa. You see that in the brain, there's one of the meninges is punctured, so it's a treifa. But you're not going to know that until you open it up, right? Some of the things you don't have to check for you because you don't suspect for that. But if you would find out, that would be a problem. So, but here we're thinking that if it's all inside, so how did you know that it ever got mixed in? Amri de Rabbi Yanai says, here we're going to introduce types of treifas that are not recognizable. All right, that's all. The Gemara is introducing. This is really a chulin Gemara. And elu treifas, you have a whole parak about different types of treifas. We're introducing treifas that there's certain types of treifas that you can't tell. Kigoyin the arav nekuva sakoy, it's bedrusas azev. I see a scratch on it. There's two types of scratches. Depends what it comes from. Maybe it got scratched from a thorn. Maybe it got scratched from a wolf. Got scratched from a wolf, then we say that it's a treifa. Got scratched from a thorn, but that wasn't a concern. What is the one is rabies and one is tetanus? No, the thorn wasn't even metal. The thorn was a wooden thorn. So the thorn, it's a scratch, it will heal. But the wolf, that could be a treifa. That could die from that. Now we look at the animal, we see a scratch, but we don't know, or we see animals with scratches. We don't know which animal. We don't know which one was the one that was the wolf and which one was the one from the thorn. So we have an example of a treifa, an animal that's a treifa, but you can't tell that it's a treifa now, and you won't be able to tell when you open it up either. It's mixed in. It had to the only way that you could tell it that it's a treifa is because you witnessed the event that happened by how the scratch came about. It's impossible to tell the difference. Rish Lakish says, going the Arav bin Afula. Another example of a treifa that you will learn in Hilchos Treifas. If an animal falls from a high place, so is a concern that maybe things got ruptured inside. It could be a disaster. However, if it waits 24 hours and it's doing fine, it gets up and walks around, you say it's going to be okay. So the Gemara says, 1 second, the Afula Nami Livdika. You could check if it's going to be okay. You wait, you see if it walks, and then we say that it's going to be fine. It says Kasavar, because Rish Lakish holds Amda Tzricha Me'es La'es, that even if it stands up, you still need 24 hours. And Holcha, even if it started to walk, but you don't need 24 hours, but Tzricha Bedika, but you have to open it up afterwards and to examine if something happened inside. So now it got mixed in with other animals, and you wanted to offer it today, I guess. Yes, the Gemara is talking about where you needed to offer it today, because otherwise tomorrow it would all be fine. Because once it waits 24 hours. So that sounds like a davar sheish l'matir. I don't know. So so far we have one answer from Rabbi Yanai that says that it was the scratch. Rish Lakish says that it was a fallen animal. Rabbi Yirmi Amar going the Arav bevlad treifa, and for Rabbi Lezer Damar vlad treifa liikra gam mizbeach. Very interesting. Rabbi Eliezer is of the unique opinion that if the parent of this animal was a treifa, was going to die, but nevertheless it had an offspring, that the offspring is prohibited, because what comes from a treifa is considered treifa, right? Like milk that comes from a treifa is considered treifa milk, not kosher milk. Yeah, that's a whole discussion about the milk. We mentioned this in Chulin, Naftali, I don't know if you remember. But if there's a certain percentage of our animals that are treifa, then when the milk comes into the big container, we'd have to view that the milk that comes from a treifa is in there because a certain percentage of our animals are treifas. Now, when you shecht it, you find out you don't eat that meat. But when you're taking the milk from it, and that's the statistics, so it's going to be more than 1 in 60. It'll only be 2 out of 100 is going to be a treifa. It's more than 2 out of 100 treifa. So therefore, the milk statistically should be treifa milk that comes in. I think because of that, I think Rabbi Herschel Schechter doesn't drink milk. Yeah. No, that's nothing to do with Oyedei. Oyedei is a different story. Oyedei has to do with a totally different halacha, nothing to do with treifas. Yeah, it turns out that when you get Chalav Yisrael, they make sure that the animals that they're milking aren't the treifa, because there's certain things that they do to the stomach, to the animals. And so in the Chalav Yisrael farms, every animal has its medical record. And, they have to know that the animals aren't treifas. So it could be some of the animals, they take care of them. The animals, they have the whole medical history. This one needed this shot, this one needed this. Certain things could render the animal, certain procedures could render the animal a treifa. They did puncture through the stomach with some injection or something, and that could make the animal a treifa. Anyway, whatever the case is, Rabbi Lezer holds that the offspring of a treifa is also a treifa. Now, how can you look at it and say, "Oh, I know you're what was that the other song? Yankel, 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 Mekendach ala deine yichas." Right? So, we know that your mother was a treifa. So, okay, so that's why it's not recognizable. We introduced over here 3 types of treifas that are not recognizable. The Gemara says, "Kulu Rabbi Le'amri." Why didn't they say? Why didn't the other 2 opinions, Rish Lakish and Rabbi Yirmiyah, say like Rabbi Yanai? This the Gemara does in several places. It's not so common, but the Gemara does do this, where it lists up all our different answers and explains why each one didn't accept the other one. It says it doesn't say like Rabbi Yanai bein kuvas hakait the juices zev made the yediyah hay mashech v'hayagel, because you can tell the difference between a scratch from a thorn and a scratch from a wolf. One is a straight scratch, that would be a thorn, and the wolf has a round scratch because its nails are round. No, actually, it says exactly the opposite. It says exactly the opposite of what I was thinking. Exactly the opposite. That's amazing. I thought that it would be like you would see like the roundness of a nail. I thought that's what it meant. Apparently, what it means is that if it would be a thorn, then you would see that the puncture was just a round hole. That's what you would see. You'd see the puncture, a round hole. But if it would be from a wolf, you would see the tear. You would see a tear because it grabbed it. So it would be long. It would be long. The puncture would be long as opposed to just a round hole. So the thorn is round, and the wolf is straight as an incision. That's what you would see. Okay, it's exactly the opposite of what I would thought. Okay, why don't they say like Rish Lakish? Rish Lakish Layamri, Rabbi Yani and Rabbi Yirmiyah don't say like Rish Lakish because Kasavri Amdein Tzricha Meisleis Halchein Tzricha Bedika. They hold that once it stands up, it's kosher, and once it walks, it doesn't need to be examined. So they hold that that's it's immediately you're able to tell if it's going to be acceptable or not. Rabbi Yirmiyah, they don't say like Rabbi Yirmiyah either, because remember Rabbi Yirmiyah was the one that said that if the mother's a treifa, then the animal is not acceptable to be a sacrifice. They don't want to say that the Mishnah is talking about the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer that no one holds of. Found like one opinion that holds this, and then you say that that's our Mishnah. Okay. We said that what do you do? Let's say you have a sacrifice that got mixed in with another sacrifice, And it's the same type of sacrifice. Both of them are oilos. Both of them are chatas. Both of them are, well, I'd say chatas maybe. Yeah, maybe chatas would be the same. Both of them are shlamim, whatever it is. It gets mixed up. So what do you do? So you say, if this is so-and-so's, so then it should be for him. And if it's Reuven's, it should be on behalf of Reuven. If it's Shimon, it should be on behalf. Then you take the other animal. You say, if it's Reuven, then it should be for him. If it's Shimon, it should be for him. And you could offer them on the altar, even though you mixed up the animals. Who's the owner of which one? Yeah. Gemara says, what about the leaning on the animal? You have the owner leans on the animal. I would have answered just the owner leans on both. Right? Just do it like that. So Taisva says that you're not allowed to lean on an animal if you're not doing if mishtamish b'kachim, you're getting support from a sacrifice. You have to put all your weight on it. You're only allowed to do it if this is the halacha. Okay. So Rabbi Smicha, you have to lean on it. Rabbi Yosef, look at the teretz. Rabbi Yosef's teretz is b'karban nashim. We're dealing with the women's sacrifice. Two women mixed up their sacrifices. There's no smicha by a woman's sacrifice. It says Daber al Bnei Yisrael, and Bnei Yisrael Samchen, and Bnei Yisrael Samchen. Remember, this is a Gemara Tzmura. Smicha is only performed on an animal of a man, not on an animal of a woman. It says Daber al Bnei Yisrael. Gemara asks, so you mean the whole Mishnah is only talking about the case where the sacrifices were from women? You're going to put this in the special booklets. Today they have a siddur for women, just what the women need to say. So we'll have a Shulchan Aruch just for women, and we're going to put in there also the sacrifices of women. So this Mishnah that we have to take it out of the men's Gemara and put it into the women's. We're going to say that if it's, you have a comment?
Just one.
We're turning the page.
But just from 2 sentences back regarding the difference between the thorn and the scratch of the wolf. If I learned it right, because I kind of learned ahead, the problem is that the thing has to be shalom. So if you have a gash, so part of it is removed, technically, of the meat, similar to a shechet's knife when he checks, and there's a nick, part of the knife is removed, then that's usra. But a thorn, I believe, is no different than like our pores in the body. Our body has tiny little holes that are totally insignificant. Right. They don't remove anything. So that's what I think.
The only thing is, that's by an esrog, where we make a difference between if it's punctured but missing, punctured but not missing. That was like by an esrog. When it comes to a treifa, the puncture makes a difference between what punctured it, even if there's nothing missing. Even if it's just like the incision of a nail versus the incision of a thorn.
Yeah, I understand.
So even if there's nothing missing, still, if it was an animal, it's still us.
So it has nothing to do with like the gash?
No, it doesn't have to do with the gash. The only thing is they were saying, what do you mean? You can tell the difference between if it was an animal or this, but that's just because the detective can tell that. What did this come from? Okay. Sherlock Holmes would be able to tell. Like what's.
Try to learn ahead of it.
Okay.
Question.
Oh, it's a chassid song.
Yesterday's Rambam mentioned that at least when it comes to capital punishment, men and women are the same.
Right.
But isn't it also the case that there's circumstances in which a person can bring a carbon, and it was harsher than what otherwise would have happened to him. It takes care of it. So does this mean that women are subject to more punishments than men because they can't bring a carbon?
No. It doesn't mean that they can't bring the carbon. It actually means they do bring the carbon. They just don't have to personally lean on it.
Okay.
It just means the leaning on it is not done if it's a woman's sacrifice. The women actually, that's like sort of proves this, that the women bring the sacrifice just like the men. They also bring sacrifices. The thing is, they don't lean on it. Our question was, How could you bring both sacrifices and just say, well, if it's for Reuven, then fine. If it's for Shimon, fine. But one second, what about leaning on it? They have to lean on it. We answered, it's not for Reuven and Shimon. It's for Rachel and Leah. They mixed up the sacrifice. Abaya has a question asked in Rabbi Yosef that you said that it was only for I guess we're done with that question. Now we have a new question. Rabbi Yosef was the one that introduced that it's for women. The sacrifice was for women, that's why there's no leaning on. We used Rachel as an example. With what?
It was that to do with mixing of sacrifices. I was thinking was.
I don't remember using Rachel and Leah before.
That's what I was thinking. They use women in that example because they didn't have to. They were able. The sacrifices were able to get confused.
Yeah, but I don't remember that from before. Where did we mention that? It's in the Parsha. That's why I'm using that example because it's in the Parsha. Rachel Leah was under the veil and wasn't Rachel, and I'm sorry. Across, they call this when they do. What does it say? Does Rachel and Leah there?
And you used Rachel and Leah, and it was good because I was given to father along.
Oh no! That's talking about when a woman gave birth. We're not talking about birds. That's by birds, by a woman that gave birth. Yeah. Now this is an animal sacrifice. You don't do smicha on birds. That's another, right? There's no smicha on birds. It's only on them. Okay, now it says like this. But just this entire question of Abaya, he's just going to be quoting a Mishnah that says that that a man's carbon that gets mixed with another man's carbon is going to end up being offered on the altar. And it's not the way Rabbi Yosef says that it's only women's carbonas that are going to get offered. Okay, so it's sometimes we quote a long thing, but that we have like one fine point, and that's the whole thing. It says, "Carbon yachid shenasar b'carbon yachid." An individual sacrifice get mixed with another individual sacrifice. Carbon tzibur shenasar b'carbon tzibur. Maybe it was a community sacrifice that got mixed with a community sacrifice. Carbon yachid with carbon tzibur shenasar b'carbon. Maybe it was an individual with a community. So naisin arba matanis mikol echad ve'echad. The Kayan puts 4 applications of blood from each one. Let's say if there was a chatas in there, then you need to have on each corner. If it was an ayla, then it's two, which are 4. Okay, whatever. If you give one, no, sometimes the sacrifices that get mixed up have different applications of blood. But if you gave one, you're going to be yotza. If you put one on each corner, or maybe it's just 2 that are 4, some commentaries say, then yotza. When do we say that you have to put 4 applications? That's when it got mixed up while they were alive. But if they got mixed up, in other words, afterwards, and the blood got mixed up. So then, you put 4 applications of blood from the blood that got mixed up. And if you did one application, b'di'evet, we always said, that one application satisfies, unless it's those special sacrifices that were brought in the sanctuary. Rabbi says that there has to be enough for each sacrifice in this blood. You have to have enough blood for each sacrifice. We're going to ask, like, how much blood do you need? The Gemara is going to ask later. However, whatever the case is, Abaya's question is Katani Yachid Damidati. But look at our cases over here. We have individuals, we have community. We're probably, when we're talking about individuals, we're probably not referring to women. We're probably talking about just like the community. What's the community? The community meant the men. So Yachid Damidati, Ma Tzibur Gavri, Af Yachid Shel Gavri, Af Yachid Gavri. Just like the community sacrifice was the men community sacrifice, also the individual was talking about men. You're telling me that the Mishnah is only referring to women. We see that individual sacrifice that got mixed up, they're both offered. Rava says, V'tizbra, Amitaretsti. That brisa, I said it was a Mishnah, it's a brisa. That brisa itself has inherent problems. And so therefore, when you have to correct it, you're going to correct it in another way as well. You can't ask a kasha from this on Rabbi Yosef. Diktani b'med devarim amurim, because it says, when do you say they have to give 4 applications? Kishin asar b'chayim. That's when it was mixed up. The animals were mixed up while they were alive. But if they're mixed up after the shchita, then it's not there's no difference. It says mali chayim mali shchutim. What should the difference be? Ella hachikama. Rather, it must mean b'med devarim amurim nisar b'shchutim ki en chayim b'kaises. We're talking about over here that the blood wasn't mixed up in one cup. The blood was put into one cup of this sacrifice, and the other sacrifice had its blood in its cup. Each one was held separately. And we're looking at the blood as if we're calling it like it got mixed up while it was alive. Why is it mixed up? Because each one was separate. Mixed up after the shechita, we would say that the blood got mixed together in the same cup. We're saying no, each one was held separate. That's when we say whether it's mixed while it's alive or mixed after it's dead, what we mean to say is that whether the blood got mixed together or whether the blood is still contained separately. But if it gets mixed together, then you just have to do 1 application of blood for 4 applications of blood for all the sacrifices, for each of the sacrifices. But we never were talking about a case where the animals were mixed up together. So what's happening here is that the Gemara before was saying that if it's mixed together, animals are mixed together while they're alive, then you should have to do smicha. So Rabbi Yosef said, no, you don't have to do smicha because it's women's sacrifices. So we quoted a brisa that says that animals are mixed together, and that assumes to be men's sacrifices. And nevertheless, we said that you offer it. And we didn't mention the smicha part. What do you do about the smicha? So comes along Rabbah and says, no, it was never mixed up while it was alive. While it was alive, they did the smicha, everyone we knew. It was only mixed up after it was shechted. So why do you say it was mixed up alive? Meant is as if it was alive, that the blood was contained separately.
What is 4 applications?
That if it just means that if it would be a chatas, then you would have to do an application on each of the corners.
Okay, that's right.
And if it was an oila, then it would be 2 applications with 2 which are 4. Rabbi Yaimer, Rayina Samatanim, Yesh Bakdilze, Vimla Psula. Let me just see where this ends. Let's try to finish to then, that way we can leave it. Rabbi says that you have to see if there's enough of in the blood to make an actual application for each one. Yeah, it has to be a shear of blood to be able to put on the corners for each one of the sacrifices that got mixed in here. But does Rebbe actually hold this? But Rebbe says that if you have the water of a paraduma that needs to be sprinkled, and other water got mixed into it. According to Rebbe Lezer, that holds that you're allowed to sprinkle that water. Right, it's, if water for the paraduma that needs to be sprinkled, and other water got mixed in, Rabbi Lezer holds you're allowed to sprinkle it. Hazah kol shumataris, any sort of sprinkling would work. Hazah in tzricha shir, and the explanation is because even the smallest drop of hazah, of sprinkling of the paraduma water, is enough. I don't need a shear. And we're thinking that if Rebbe holds that hazah doesn't need a shear, so we also think hazah mechza kasher mechza pasol is going to be kosher. Okay, so that would tell me also that if I would do the application of blood, it should be the same thing. Why does Rebbe say that you need to have a shear? It doesn't matter. There's no such thing as a shear. The smallest amount works. So the Gemara answers, "L'dvar of the Rabbi Lezer Kamar." Maybe when Rebbe said this over, and he said, "L'divrei Rabbi Lezer," according to Rabbi Lezer, hazah doesn't need a shear. The same thing does apply to the blood, but Rebbe doesn't hold of that. Rebbe holds that really hazah does need a shear. So why do you say hazah doesn't need it? He said, that's why he said, L'divrei Rabbi Eliezer, it doesn't need a shear, but I hold differently. Other teretz is, maybe there's a difference between sprinkling the water of the paraduma and sprinkling of the blood. That the blood doesn't need a shear and the water doesn't need a shear. Okay, we're holding by Ayin Hey Amud Beis, which is our correct page, but we're on top. Nasar v'Bukhar.
Previously, when they would sweep up the leftover blood on the floor,
Yeah, there was.
what would